To say that women's pro hockey has been flipped on its head over the last month or so would be the understatement of the year. It's been flipped, twisted, turned, zigzagged, and maybe twisted all over again. And by the way, it still hasn't landed yet. In case you've been living under a rock, let me bring you up to speed a bit. For years, we saw not one, but two pro women's hockey leagues, the CWHL and the NWHL. And you would be absolutely hard-pressed to find one person who thought that was a good idea. Coaches, players, even commissioners, they all agreed in order to make the game grow, you need one league with the best female players in the world playing in it. Makes sense, right? But then an absolute bomb dropped.
Just days after the league celebrated its most watched championship game, the CWHL says it still wasn't enough.
The CWHL announced they were ceasing operations.
Under this model, we can't advance the women's game to the degree that it deserves.
They said their business model was, quote, economically unstable. Whoa. What did this mean? What would the NWHL do? What about the NHL? Players, coaches, everyone has said they would love a singular league, but they've also added they wanted it under the control of the NHL. But that turned out to be nothing compared to what happened next.
Female hockey players are sitting out the next season.
More than 200 women banded together and released a statement.
They say they will not compete in North America.
Quote, we will not play in any professional leagues in North America this season until we get the resources that professional hockey demands and deserves. It's time for a long-term, viable professional league that will showcase the greatest product of women's professional hockey in the world. #ForTheGame. Now, I want to be clear, that's just a small piece of the statement, but you get the idea. Told you off the top there were a lot of twists and turns. Today we're going to try to untwist and turn it and hit this story from as many angles as we can. Now, Sarah Nurse is one of those 200 players that was part of the For the Game movement. And she's going to tell us not only how it got started, but how players are feeling right now. Spoiler alert, she uses the word terrifying. And Anya Battaglino, she's the current director of the NWHL Players Association, and she doesn't think this is the best way to go. In fact, she said it's setting the game backward. Wow. She's also going to join us. It's all about the women's pro hockey roller coaster. I'm Rob Pizzo. This is the Hockey Night in Canada podcast.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans, United States and Newfoundland.
All right, to help us try to walk through this story, Canadian Olympian Sarah Nurse, who of course played this past season with the Toronto Furies of the CWHL. She's joining us now on the Hockey Night in Canada podcast. Sarah, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Sarah, let's just dive right in head first. I mean, we've been talking about needing one league for women's hockey for years now. It's what's needed to grow. When the CWHL made their announcement, they were ceasing operations. I'm wondering if that was kind of the move that forced the players' hand to say, you know what, it's now or never, or was this kind of a movement that's been maybe talked about a little bit in the dressing rooms at practice for a while now?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of momentum with women's hockey over the past few years, and obviously the whole one league talk has been something that we've been talking about for a few years now, especially since the last Olympics in 2018. And so when the CWHL folded, we were obviously all shocked and devastated, but I think it was the kick in the butt that we really needed to say, hey, you know, let's make a stand and let's create something better for the future.
So I was working in our CBC newsroom when this news came out, and to say it exploded might have been a bit of an understatement. Were you surprised at how quickly this thing just kind of, the bomb dropped, and did your phone blow up? And was everyone just kind of trying to reach you to say, well, what's going on with this?
Honestly, I didn't know how it was going to be received. Obviously, I knew that it was going to be some pretty big news, but I didn't really know the magnitude of it. Yesterday I had a doctor's appointment. I was kind of just going to the mall, and I kind of watched this thing drop, and I got a call to my phone saying, hey, there's going to be a camera crew at your house at 2 o'clock. You're going to be on a podcast at 4, and then at 6:30 we need you in Toronto on Sportsnet. And so it really blew up, and I think it kept the momentum going, and we've gotten a huge amount of support and from so many different organizations, so many individuals, and so I'm excited about what's to come.
So you say you're excited, and I understand that you are, and I mean, you've got 200 women here doing what's best for women's hockey. But, you know, I also imagine there's got to be some apprehension about this. I mean, I saw Hillary Knight call this move, quote, nerve-wracking. When this process was going down, when you guys were at the World Championships kind of talking about this and what's best for moving forward, did you find some players were gung-ho 100% and maybe the other ones were a little bit like, I don't know if I want to rock this boat?
Yeah, obviously I think it's pretty terrifying. Going into the kind of weeks of talks and conversations we've had, it's been nerve-wracking. And, you know, I think once we kind of figured out our plan and devised what we really wanted, I think that the camaraderie and how we're united as a group, there was no hesitations on what we wanted to do. It was just obviously nerve-wracking putting this out to the public and really just putting ourselves out there. And there's a lot on the line right now for us, but we're excited, and we're excited for the direction this is going. Okay, well,
let's go in that direction and what you guys wanted, because, you know, I was reading your release and I saw the word resources. It jumped out to me. And a lot of times when fans hear words like boycott or sit out or won't play, they think of just pro athletes wanting more cash. And this is obviously not the case with your cause. When I'm hearing things like $2,000 a year, this is not just a bunch of rich athletes wanting more money. Maybe talk a little bit about, because I think it's important to get those numbers out there, not only player salaries, but when you say resources, what is it that you guys want?
Yeah, I guess for us, we hesitate on calling this a boycott because we really don't think that it is a boycott. You know, we're trying to close the chapter on kind of what has been happening for us in the past and move forward with something new, a new venture. I guess financially, you know, I'm one of those players that my CWHL salary was $2,000. And obviously, you know, that hurts. And we want to be playing for more money, but the compensation piece to us is a big part of it, but it's not the main goal of this. We ultimately want to be treated like professionals. Professionals in sports organizations, they have a whole bunch of resources. They have the technology, they have the support staff, they have everything in place that they need to be professional athletes. And at this time, with the current state of professional women's hockey, we didn't have that. And so we want to push for that moving forward.
Yeah, you know, like I said, I think a lot of people look at this and they think salaries, but, you know, when strength and conditioning coaches and, you know, everything that comes with a professional team,
Absolutely.
I think we take that for granted. And I'm going to be honest with you, as somebody who covers hockey for a living, I didn't even know how bad it was for your professional league, for the CWHL, thinking, really? These are things they're asking for? They're not asking for, you know, more money for Ferraris. They're asking for anything a professional team would have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the CWHL was a nonprofit organization, and that model, we were paid in stipends, I guess. And honestly, that we were never going to get there with the model that we are currently under. And so I think just moving forward, we want to expose what's going on in women's hockey. You know, people, you know, as you said, people don't understand what's truly going on. You know, they hear about these professional leagues and they don't understand that realistically it's not professional. We're not compensated like professionals. We're not treated like professionals. And so I really think that we wanted to raise awareness to that fact. And, you know, we don't mean to, I've been called ungrateful. I've been called lazy in the last 2 days, in the last few weeks, because of this. And I think that, you know, that's wrong. And we want to shed light on the real situation.
Like I said, I was in a newsroom when this whole thing started breaking, and there was one question that a lot of people came up to me and asked, and everyone was discussing. What's the NHL going to do about this? Now, we know that they were giving a certain amount of money, $50,000 to each league, and they've already kind of said they don't want to interfere while there is a league still ongoing, which is the NWHL. But, I mean, when you look at what you guys have done, is this hoping to, I don't want to say force the hand, but nudge the hand of the NHL to say, you know what, we need you guys? Because it's been no secret you want one league, but I've heard so many women in your league say under the NHL would be great.
We would love an NHL backing, and I think that would be incredible for our sport and our game. I think it would add a real legitimacy to our game. Obviously, the statements that the NHL have put out, you've seen them, we've seen them, and they've said that they're not going to step in while there's still a viable option. And so I think this is us standing together and saying there is no real viable option for professional women's hockey right now, and we really want people to recognize that. If it's not the NHL and it's somebody else who sees the value in our game, that's amazing too. But we want to build a professional culture for generations to come.
Okay, so how much of that, though, is financial backing and how much of that is just knowing how to run a successful league? Because obviously anybody could come in and say, here's a whole bunch of money, and it could fail again. How much is it that you need the league to run you in the right way? Because you talked earlier about the business model that just wasn't working. The NHL has a product that is working.
Absolutely. And that's what's so special about them. They have the resources, they have the infrastructure, they have the model already. And so I think using that to our advantage would be incredible. I think it needs to be a combination of both. I think it needs to be the financial and then also the right direction. We want to move forward together. And it's a really amazing thing. Women's hockey is one of the fastest growing sports in the world. And so there's so many young girls who are playing this sport, and then they play for 10, 15 years, dedicate their life to this, and then what do they do after? And so I think this is going to be huge for women's hockey.
When you and the other women were discussing doing this, how much of a timeline was discussed as far as what's the best case scenario? I mean, I know you guys are prepared to sit out the year. I don't think you want to sit out the year. I don't think that's something you look forward to doing, but was a timeline discussed at all?
Yes, we definitely don't want to sit out a year. We're all, we've been playing this game for 15 years, and not a lot of us are going to be playing it for 15 more kind of thing. So a ton of us are at almost the end of our careers, really. And so sitting out is not ideal, but something good being built, it takes time. And so I think we're willing to take the year off from professional hockey because we think that's the amount of time that needs to be taken for the steps in the right direction.
Best case scenario, Sarah. If you could write the script right now, what would be the best case scenario for you? We
would love in, 12 to 18 months to have this thing figured out and to have a professional league where we're treated like professionals and we're compensated as such. We're not in this for millions and millions of dollars. We're realistic. We just love to have, a livable wage so that we can perform at our best at all times. And that's ultimately what we want. Sarah, there's that saying, you got to put your money where your mouth is. You guys are doing this so future generations will have that money to do that. I commend you for what you're doing. There's nothing worse than taking the skates off to for something you believe in, but obviously this is for the future of the game. Thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Good luck with the cause, and hopefully the next time we talk to you on the show, we'll be talking about some sort of championship run you're on in the playoffs in a professional hockey league. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Okay, well, most people agree that a single league is the way to go to help women's pro hockey. I don't think everyone agrees that this is the best course of action. Anya Battaglino is one of those people. She's the current director of the NWHL Players Association and a member of the Connecticut Whale. And she joins us on the Hockey Night in Canada podcast. Anya, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Let's start with your statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but, one line that jumped out to me and jumped out to a lot of people is you thought this movement set women's hockey backwards. You've had some time to chew it over. I'm sure you've had some time to talk to some people. Maybe explain what you mean by that, and has your opinion changed at all over the last week or so?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of time to talk to different folks, talk to different people, and it's not so much that, I wanted to come off abrasively and say, this is wrong, this is this, this is that. I believe that we all do have the same goal. We all want the same thing. We want women to have higher respect in the sport. We want better quality of life, better wages, all these different things. It's just what's our method? What's our way of going about it? And how do we do that in the most fruitful way possible? And for me, I believe that with the momentum that we have and the unfortunate folds of the CWHL, is the best thing for women's hockey to stop. Is the best thing to stand down, stop, and say, we can't do this by ourselves. We need XYZ support, or we need this, or we need that. Or do we band together, play as a single league, and make headway towards more marketing, towards better sponsorship, towards increased wages and benefits? So my comment is more to pose the question of how, not if we want the same thing. So I still stand by what I said. I still believe that what we should be doing is charging forward together. So I don't know if that was a long-winded version of an answer, but yeah, I stand by what I said.
No long-winded at all. It's interesting because, when the news broke about, what was going on, it seemed very, if I could use the word, unanimous. I felt like the message was out there that everyone was on board, and us speaking to you right now proves otherwise. Since that happened, have other players called you, contacted you to say, you know what, I'm with you on this one. We all want the same thing, but this is just not the right way to go about it.
Yeah, what it's posed is, unfortunately, a dichotomy, right? So you have USA Hockey standing pretty unanimously in 2017, I believe, at Worlds to have increased wages and support from USA Hockey. And in that movement, you had every player from the college level to the pro level to the national team level saying, 100% we stand by you. We will not play as scabs. We will not move forward with any conversations with USA Hockey. We believe in your strategy. And now you have a fair amount of people that say, I don't want to be forced into retirement for a what if. I don't know what this looks like. I don't have complete confidence that these people are going to completely change their tune. Or when they're asking questions that could be a predicator of why and what decision they're going to make, their answer from any side might not be what they want. So what I urge, and for anybody that says, okay, well, I might have been on board with this and now I'm not, or I might have been on board with playing in the league and now I'm not, I urge everybody to just speak freely, open the dialogue, and have a conversation, because the best case scenario for women's hockey is that we all get on the same page and that we can all make actionable changes and actionable next steps. So whatever that looks like, and listen, if every single player in every single league said to me, this is what we all want, then I would obviously stand forward. But I'm a person that kind of works in the business side of things, and I really believe that our best step forward is with a very solid contract and a unified force playing together so that we can turn to the NHLs, the single team ownership, the massive companies and say, look at what we have here. Look at the growth that we've had year over year. Look at the trajectory that we've been able to build on a fan base, on a ticket sales base, on a, teams in the black. All these different data points that we can provide to make ourselves investable gives us a lot more power, in my opinion, than standing down.
Okay, so given what you just said, Anya, is it fair to say maybe leading into this decision there was a little bit of a failure to communicate? Because you talk about wanting to sit down and have good dialogue. I mean, were you part of the conversations with the over 200 women who said, you know what if we stand down? What if we don't play in any North American league? Or did it kind of come out of left field for you?
So for me, being the PA head, I had calls with the CWHL PA, I had calls with my own PA, and then we had one call with anybody that wanted to join with the NWHL leadership, myself, and then, like I said, we opened that up to basically women's pro hockey as a whole. And maybe that was 4, 5, 6 conversations in entirety. I just felt or feel, when all of these calls started to begin, where they're bringing on lawyers and they're bringing on figureheads and they're talking to the NHL leadership. Those calls I wasn't a part of, and I was negotiating, or still am, pretty soon going to release the only contract that is available to women playing professional hockey right now. So for me, it felt like a bit of a miss to not be cued into those conversations, not be privy to what we're doing, and really feel like, it was them versus me. When in reality, I just wanted to encompass what everybody wanted and to get a contract to the NWHL that they could either reject. Now, if we had an completely executed contract that had the players of the movement, all of their buckets checked, and the NWHL said 0% chance we're doing any of those things, I can respect and appreciate the boycott. But we haven't even gotten to that point yet, and so for me, it's a little frustrating to kind of be on the outside, like you said, to feel like a couple conversations where people's minds were already made up walking into those conversations by the climate of the questions they were asking and, the nature of their responses. People already had their minds made up, and it was really hard to compete with that.
So where does that contract situation stand right now?
So right now we've gone through the third pass of it, and it's sitting in our lawyers' lap. They are, I believe, ready to submit and say all is good. There's a couple things that we just want to tweak some words on, but we wrote it this year. So this year, better than ever, our lawyers wrote the contract. We set the verbiage. We set the standards. So it's the best contract we've ever seen and our lawyers have ever seen. And we floated around to a couple other lawyers and different folks in different groups that have all said, wow, this is a welcomed change, and we're so happy the way it looks now. So I'm really excited about some of the things that we've gotten approval on and some of the different nuances of the contract that we've never had in the past, just defining work roles. And given that, everyone's pointing out the obvious, very challenging because it's a nights and weekends job, and it's not really a full-time job yet. And we're not able to pay like a full-time job can pay yet, but we're making actionable strides in a 50-50 player split. We're trying to do as much as we can to say, if the league is successful, then the PA should be too. If the league signs a deal, the players should feel it. If the league gets a media deal, the players should get money in their pockets. It shouldn't be like, hey, congratulations, player, you're now going to be on TV. Thumbs up. It should be a dollar amount going to that person's bank account that says, this is why, broadcasting company XYZ picked us up because of you. So we've pushed really hard to get that equal split where, even in the WNBA, it's a 75-25. So we've tried to take industry standards and shatter them because we don't want to the league doesn't want to overpromise and underdeliver ever again. But the PA said, we deserve more money. So let's find a way to make that happen. So, in all these negotiations, we've, in my opinion, finally negotiated a contract that makes the players equitable for the success of the league. And we haven't seen it in action yet. We haven't seen a revenue split actually occur yet because this is the first time that we've gotten approval on it.
Okay, so can you give us a timeline as to when we can expect this to become public?
I believe by this evening.
Wow. So you're saying right now this is still waiting for approval. It's just going to be presented?
Yes. So in years past, the way all of our contract negotiations have gone is the league writes the contract, the PA gets it, basically our lawyers redline the whole thing, send it to our PA leaders, they vote, and then we kind of go back and forth on all of these line items. This year, given the added complexity that most of my PA reps have, without communicating to me, joined the boycott, I've kind of been left on an island. So I'm communicating with the PA reps that I still have a conversational basis with. I'm communicating with our lawyers. I'm communicating with captains, players that I can get some conversation back and forth. But the challenge with anything is we're only as good as our response rate, So when we try to do a vote or when we try to do a strategic alignment or when we try to talk about some of these negotiated terms and people just don't answer, I kind of get left by myself. So this year it's been more complex than ever before. So what we did in our first couple meetings with the two PAs is we basically got a call to action list. This would be great. That would be great. I called it like a wish list. Like, tell me if you want a purple car, and I'll try to put it into the negotiations. We tried to get as many pieces that we could possibly extrapolate to start fighting for. So basically, I'll mirror that off of our want list, and I'll align what we have, and I'll just send it to everybody. I want everybody to know what the new contract looks like, whether they have vehemently stood against us or they align with us, or maybe they're unsure. Everybody should know what the opportunity for women's hockey is when they pass on it. And if they do, I can respect anyone's decision, but I just want everyone to be informed.
Wow. This is, you can understand how there are so many elements to this story and so many sides to this story. Last question before we let you go, Anya, just if you could write a best case scenario for what could happen in women's pro hockey over the next year, what would it be?
I think it all aligns to what the players do as a unified force. Do I think that we could play a year without any national team players from any country? Yes, because we've done it before. We've done it in centralization years. We've had to do it when there's camps, when there's things going on. But the best case scenario would be any of these companies coming forward saying this supports the For the Game movement, opening their purse strings to supporting women's hockey. It's something that I would love to see us move forward on together, because imagine the For the Game movement begins and they procure, let's just say $500,000 in funding for ice time, gap year expenses. I don't know if they're providing insurance, but if they do, somehow paying for that. I mean, all of these different line items that are going to cost them things that we could provide them in the NWHL and a team and a place to play and all those things. But if that $500,000 was given to the league and split equally, $250,000 would go to players' bottom lines. It wouldn't go to ice expenses. It wouldn't go to, all these other things. So I guess for me, right, if I were to wave my magic wand and have the best case scenario, it would be for all the players in the For the Game movement to get their win in all of their wants and demands now on our executed contract, or as many as we could possibly have fit, and then have them play in the league and let people support and let companies get involved and have maybe somebody like the NWHL or, the NHL, now that they're going into their CBA contract negotiations, say, okay, we're going to actually invest in this league, or we're going to buy it out and change the entire ownership group. I mean, I'm fine with any of the, 2020 iterations of what this might look like, but that holistic group altogether would be, in my opinion, the best case scenario, because we could do it without the national team players, but nobody wants to. We want the best product on the ice. We want to give the fans what they want, and we want to give the players the ability to get better every single year. And if that means in a calendar year from now, they all say, Anya, we're done with this league, I understand that, and I can fight for them internally if that's the voice of the entire group. But let's at least unify and play in one league. Let's see what it looks like, because some of these ideas, these ethereal ideas of joining an NHL-sponsored one league in a full-time job capacity, you're asking women to give up their careers. You're asking teachers to give up pension plans and benefits and things that they can currently keep while playing in the NWHL for, even if the base salary is $40,000. I mean, we really enter this toss-up between what makes the most sense for women. So I don't know. I guess that's my hope and goal. I added a lot of stuff in there, so I apologize.
You never need to apologize. Yeah, you don't need to apologize for being thorough with us. Anya, thanks so much. Good luck in this battle, and hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, and I'm always happy to chat.
Okay, so big thanks to Anya Battaglino for coming on. Now, obviously, you heard in that interview that the new contract was going to come out, and she said tonight. We taped this show throughout the week, but when we heard that, we decided to stick around and wait for this release to come out. Unfortunately, there was a delay. A lot of times we see that with lawyers. They say they're almost ready to sign off on something, and then, well, you know what? We've got one more piece of information that needs to be negotiated. So at the time we needed to put this podcast up, the contract still had not come out, but we're going to try to keep you updated. If anything big comes out next week's podcast, we'll let you know about it. But unfortunately, by the time we had to put this up on iTunes and cbcsports.ca, we still hadn't seen that contract. Okay, before we go, I want to mention this. If you're a sports fan, and I'm assuming you are if you're listening to this podcast, and you want to hear some really cool stories about athletes on the field and off the field of play, you have to listen to the Players' Own Voice podcast. It's hosted by Anastasia Busis, who is a two-time Olympian. Trust me, she knows what she's talking about. And what I really like about this podcast, it looks at athletes as human first, athlete second. Not too many podcasts do that. And it sheds some pretty intimate light on some of your favorite athletes. So download CBC Sports' Players' Own Voice podcast It's absolutely fantastic. The Hockey Night in Canada podcast is a CBC Sports production. Remember, if you mention us on social media, use the hashtag Hockey Night in Canada podcast. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, see those 5 stars? Yeah, click the 5th one all the way to the right and leave us a review. We want to hear from you. Put nice things about us or just suggestions if you have something you want to hear on the show. Big thanks to everyone involved with the show. Sunil Thakur-Karan is our producer and the guy who makes me look and sound good each and every week. Sofia Jurkstrovich is our features producer. Laura Antonelli is our technician. And Graham McDonald is our sound mixer. I'm Rob Pizzo. You can find me on Twitter, ROBPIZZO. Feel free to leave me a message there as well. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.